The champagne toast was about to begin when Jessica quietly placed the DNA test results next to the three-tiered cake decorated with tiny golden booties. Around her, 200 guests celebrated her ex-husband's miracle baby with his new wife, the same wife who had been sleeping with Jessica's brother for the past year. But as Marcus raised his glass to toast his beautiful family, Jessica smiled and walked toward the exit, knowing that in 60 seconds, his perfect world would crumble. Some secrets are worth keeping. Others are worth exposing at exactly the right moment. Stay with us to discover how one woman turned betrayal into the most satisfying justice you'll ever hear. Jessica Chen had always prided herself on being the bigger person. At 36, she'd built a successful career as a financial advisor by understanding that patience and strategic thinking usually yielded better results than emotional reactions. Even when her marriage to Marcus fell apart 2 years ago, even when she discovered he'd been having an affair with his 24-year-old secretary, Brianna, Jessica had handled the divorce with grace and dignity. She'd asked for nothing more than what was legally hers, hadn't fought dirty during the proceedings, and had even wished Marcus well when he married Brianna 6 months after their divorce was finalized. Her friends called her a saint. Her family called her too forgiving. But Jessica preferred to think of herself as someone who understood that revenge was a dish best served cold, and sometimes it was better not to serve it at all. Or so she'd believed until 3 months ago. Jessica lived in a converted loft in the Arts District, a space that reflected her newfound independence with its exposed brick walls, carefully curated art collection, and the kind of minimalist furniture that suggested someone who had learned to value quality over quantity. She'd rebuilt her life methodically after the divorce, focusing on her work, reconnecting with friends she'd neglected during her marriage, and discovering parts of herself that had been dormant for years. Her younger brother Danny had been her rock during the divorce proceedings. At 32, Danny was everything Jessica wasn't: spontaneous, charming, the kind of person who could make friends with a stranger in an elevator and have them laughing by the 3rd floor. He worked as a personal trainer and sometimes model, using his natural charisma and athletic build to build a client base of wealthy women who paid premium rates for his attention as much as his fitness expertise. Jessica adored Danny, even when his romantic life was a disaster. He had a pattern of falling for unavailable women, married clients, women in complicated relationships, anyone who represented a challenge rather than a genuine connection. Jessica had spent years listening to his romantic dramas, offering advice he rarely took, and helping him pick up the pieces when his latest conquest inevitably ended badly. She never imagined she'd become collateral damage in one of his affairs. The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning while Jessica was reviewing quarterly portfolios for her highest net worth clients. She almost ignored it. Unknown number, probably spam, but something made her glance at the preview. Your brother is the father. Jessica stared at the words, her brain struggling to process their meaning. Father of what? Danny wasn't dating anyone seriously, hadn't mentioned any pregnancy scares or relationship complications in months. She opened the message. Danny is the father of Brianna's baby. I have proof. Meet me at Grind Coffee on 5th Street at 2 p.m. if you want to see it. A friend. Jessica's hands started shaking. Brianna, Marcus's new wife. The 24-year-old who had destroyed Jessica's marriage and was now 8 months pregnant with what everyone assumed was Marcus's miracle baby, the child he'd always wanted but that Jessica had been unable to give him after 3 miscarriages that had nearly broken them both. But Danny? Her brother Danny was sleeping with Brianna? Jessica closed her laptop and walked to the bathroom, where she splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection. She looked older than her 36 years, stress lines etched around her eyes from 2 years of rebuilding her life. But her expression was calm, analytical, the same look she wore when reviewing complex financial situations for clients. This was just another problem to be solved, another situation that required careful analysis and strategic thinking. At exactly 2 o'clock, Jessica walked into Grind Coffee and immediately spotted the person who'd texted her. Melissa Torres, Brianna's best friend from college, sat in the corner booth looking nervous and guilt-ridden. Jessica had met Melissa a few times during the divorce proceedings. She'd been one of Brianna's supporters, someone who'd publicly taken Brianna's side when the affair came to light. Melissa. Jessica. Thank you for coming. Melissa's voice was shaky, her eyes red from what looked like recent crying. I wasn't sure you'd want to hear from me. Why are you telling me this? Melissa pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Because Brianna's been lying to everyone. Marcus thinks he's finally getting the family he always wanted, and he's been so happy, so grateful. But the baby isn't his. She showed Jessica a series of text messages between herself and Brianna, dating back 10 months. The messages told a story that made Jessica's blood run cold. Brianna had been sleeping with Danny almost from the moment she'd started her affair with Marcus. She'd gotten pregnant and assumed the baby was Marcus's, but as her due date approached, she'd confided in Melissa about her uncertainty. She got a paternity test done privately last month, Melissa whispered. The baby is Danny's. But she's not going to tell Marcus. She's going to let him raise another man's child. Jessica scrolled through the messages, her financial advisor's mind automatically calculating timelines and implications. Why are you showing me this? Because it's not right. Marcus is a good man who deserves to know the truth. And Melissa hesitated. Because Brianna's planning to keep Danny in the baby's life secretly. She wants to have her cake and eat it too. Marcus's financial security and family stability, but Danny as the biological father who can be involved without Marcus knowing. And Danny agreed to this? Danny thinks Marcus already knows. Brianna told him that you and Marcus had an open marriage toward the end, that Marcus was okay with her seeing other people. Danny believes Marcus knows the baby might not be his, but wants to raise it anyway. Jessica closed her eyes, feeling the last piece of her faith in human decency crumble. Not only had her brother been sleeping with her ex-husband's wife, but he'd been lied to about the circumstances. Danny might be impulsive and selfish when it came to relationships, but he wasn't cruel. He would never knowingly participate in deceiving Marcus about paternity. Melissa, why are you telling me this instead of Marcus? Because if I tell Marcus, Brianna will know it came from me. She'll destroy my life, ruin my reputation, make sure I never work in this city again. Melissa's voice broke. But you have nothing left to lose where they're concerned. And you have every right to know that your brother is being manipulated. Jessica studied Melissa's face, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives. But the woman across from her just looked tired and guilty, like someone who'd been carrying a secret that was eating her alive. What do you want from me? I want you to decide what to do with this information. Tell Marcus, tell Danny, tell nobody. That's up to you. I just couldn't live with keeping it to myself anymore. Melissa left copies of the text message screenshots and a flash drive containing what she claimed were photos of Danny and Brianna together at various hotels over the past year. Jessica sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the evidence of betrayal layered upon betrayal. Marcus had cheated on her with Brianna. Danny had then cheated with Brianna while she was married to Marcus. Brianna was now deceiving Marcus about the paternity of their child while planning to maintain a secret relationship with the biological father. And Danny, her beloved brother, had once again fallen for an unavailable woman, this time, the woman who had destroyed Jessica's marriage. By the time Jessica left the coffee shop, she'd made a decision. She was going to destroy them all. But first, she was going to let them destroy themselves. That evening, Jessica called Danny. Hey, Jess. What's up? You sound weird. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Danny's voice became cautious. Are you sleeping with Brianna? Silence stretched across the phone line like a chasm. Danny. Jess, I can explain. Are you sleeping with my ex-husband's pregnant wife? It's not what you think. Marcus knows. They have an understanding. Marcus knows his wife is cheating on him. It's complicated, okay? They got married really fast after your divorce, and they both realized they'd made a mistake. But with the baby coming, they wanted to try to make it work. Marcus said he was okay with Brianna seeing other people as long as she was discreet. Jessica marveled at Brianna's manipulation. She'd convinced Danny that Marcus was a willing cuckold, allowing him to participate in the affair while maintaining his illusion of being the wronged party rather than the willing participant. Danny, when did this start? A few months ago. Jess, I know how this looks, but before or after you found out she was pregnant? Another pause. Before. But Jess, the baby isn't. I mean, it's Marcus's baby. The timing doesn't work for it to be mine. Jessica closed her eyes. Danny genuinely believed that Marcus knew about the affair and that the baby wasn't his. Brianna had created an elaborate fiction that allowed both men to feel justified in their actions while she maintained complete control over the situation. Danny, I want you to think very carefully about what you just told me. You're sleeping with the woman who destroyed my marriage, and you think that's okay because her husband supposedly doesn't mind. Jess, I know it's complicated. It's not complicated. It's betrayal. Of me, of Marcus, and of whatever principles you thought you had. Jessica hung up before Danny could respond. The next morning, she called in sick to work and spent the day conducting her own investigation. She hired a private investigator to verify Melissa's claims and gather additional evidence. She researched Marcus and Brianna's finances, their social media presence, and their upcoming plans. What she discovered was even more elaborate than she'd suspected. Marcus and Brianna were planning a massive welcome baby party for the weekend before Brianna's due date. They'd invited 200 guests, hired a professional event planner, and were spending nearly $18,000 on what was essentially a pre-birth celebration combined with a vow renewal ceremony. Marcus had been posting on social media about his gratitude for his second chance at happiness and his excitement about becoming a father. The party was scheduled for Saturday. Today was Wednesday. Jessica had 3 days to decide how to use the information she'd gathered. By Thursday evening, she'd made her choice. Jessica has discovered the ultimate betrayal, but she's not reacting emotionally. She's planning strategically. What do you think she should do with this information? Should she tell Marcus privately or expose everything publicly? Let us know in the comments what you think Jessica's next move should be. Jessica spent Friday morning in her office, handling client calls and portfolio reviews with the same calm professionalism that had built her reputation, while her personal life imploded in the background. Her assistant, Carmen, noticed something different about her demeanor. You seem, I don't know, lighter today. Like you're relieved about something. Jessica looked up from her computer, where she'd been reviewing the final details of her plan. I think I am relieved, Carmen. I think I've finally figured out how to handle a problem that's been weighing on me. Good for you. You've seemed stressed lately. If only Carmen knew. Jessica had spent the past 3 days orchestrating what would either be the most satisfying moment of justice in her life or a spectacular mistake that would haunt her forever. But for the first time since discovering Danny and Brianna's affair, she felt completely at peace with her decision. The private investigator had delivered everything she'd requested. Time-stamped photos of Danny and Brianna at 3 different hotels over the past 8 months, copies of hotel receipts charged to Danny's credit card, and most damning of all, a recording of Brianna on the phone with someone, presumably another friend, discussing her plan to let Marcus play daddy while keeping the real father around for the fun parts. Jessica had also done her homework on the paternity test. Melissa's screenshots were legitimate, verified by the lab that had performed the testing. The baby Brianna was carrying was definitely Danny's, conceived during their affair while she was married to Marcus. But the most interesting discovery had come from Jessica's review of Marcus and Brianna's social media presence. They'd been documenting their entire relationship online, the affair that destroyed Jessica's marriage, their whirlwind engagement, their lavish wedding, and now their preparation for parenthood. Marcus's posts were full of gratitude and excitement about his miracle baby and his second chance at happiness. Brianna's posts were craftily worded to encourage sympathy and support while avoiding any direct lies about paternity. They built their entire public narrative on the foundation of Marcus being the wronged party who'd found true love and was finally getting the family he'd always wanted. Jessica was about to destroy that narrative completely. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that suggested the universe was setting an appropriate mood for what was about to unfold. Jessica spent an hour getting ready, choosing her outfit with the same care she'd once applied to preparing for important client presentations. She selected a simple black dress, elegant, appropriate for a celebration, but with an undertone of mourning that felt symbolically perfect. She styled her hair in a sleek chignon that made her look older, more authoritative. Her makeup was subtle but flawless, the kind of look that suggested someone completely in control of herself and her situation. The party was being held at the Riverside Country Club, a venue that Marcus had chosen specifically because it was where he'd proposed to Jessica 5 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her. He was celebrating his new family in the same place where he'd once promised to love her forever. Jessica arrived exactly 30 minutes after the party's official start time, late enough that most guests would be settled and comfortable, but early enough that she'd arrive before any major toasts or announcements. She'd studied the event timeline Brianna had posted on social media with the obsessive attention she usually reserved for market analysis. The country club's main ballroom had been transformed into something that looked like a cross between a baby shower and a fairy tale wedding. White and gold decorations covered every surface, with enormous floral arrangements and twinkling lights creating an atmosphere of ethereal celebration. A 3-tiered cake dominated one table, decorated with delicate golden baby booties and topped with a sugar sculpture of a sleeping infant. Jessica recognized most of the guests, Marcus's family, Brianna's friends, colleagues from both their workplaces, neighbors from their upscale subdivision. 200 people who believed they were celebrating a love story and the beginning of a beautiful family. None of them knew they were actually celebrating a lie. Marcus spotted her first, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and a kind of hopeful wariness. He looked good, healthier, and happier than she'd seen him during the final years of their marriage. Fatherhood suited him, or at least the anticipation of it did. Jessica. I didn't know you were coming. Brianna invited me. This was a lie, but Jessica delivered it with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she was. I thought it was a lovely gesture. Marcus's expression shifted to something closer to gratitude. That was very gracious of her. And of you, to come. Jessica smiled, the kind of serene expression she'd perfected during years of dealing with difficult clients. I wouldn't have missed it. This is such an important day for you. Brianna appeared at Marcus's elbow, radiant in a white maternity dress that emphasized her pregnancy while maintaining an air of bridal elegance. She looked like a Madonna painting, all golden hair and glowing skin, and that special beauty that seemed to surround pregnant women. Jessica. Brianna's surprise seemed genuine, but Jessica caught the flash of calculation in her eyes. I'm so glad you could make it. Another lie, but Jessica played along. Thank you for thinking to invite me. Everything looks absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Marcus, and I wanted to celebrate properly before the baby arrives. We're so grateful for this second chance at happiness. The phrase was lifted directly from Marcus's recent social media posts. Brianna had clearly been coaching him on their public narrative, ensuring their story remained consistent across all platforms. Second chances are precious, Jessica agreed. Not everyone gets them. She spent the next hour circulating through the party, accepting congratulations from people who seemed confused about why she was there but were too polite to ask directly. She complimented the decorations, admired Brianna's dress, and made small talk about the baby's expected arrival date. Throughout it all, Jessica carried a small envelope in her purse, the kind of envelope that might contain a congratulatory card or a check for the baby's future. Several guests had noticed it and made approving comments about her generosity in attending the party of the people who had destroyed her marriage. If only they knew what the envelope actually contained. Danny arrived an hour into the party, and Jessica watched the careful choreography of his interaction with Brianna and Marcus. He hugged Brianna with appropriate restraint, the kind of embrace you'd give a friend's wife, nothing that would suggest intimacy. He shook Marcus's hand and congratulated him with what seemed like genuine warmth. Jessica had to admire the performance. If she had known the truth, she would have believed Danny was just being a supportive brother-in-law, attending his sister's ex-husband's celebration out of family obligation and basic decency. When Danny spotted her, His face went white. "Jess? What are you doing here?" "Supporting Marcus and Brianna on their special day," Jessica said sweetly. "Just like you." Danny's eyes searched her face for signs of anger or accusation, but Jessica's expression remained perfectly neutral. She'd learned long ago that the most unsettling thing you could do to someone who expected confrontation was to remain completely calm. "Jess, about our conversation the other night." "What conversation?" Jessica's smile was radiant. "I'm just here to celebrate the happy couple and their miracle baby." The emphasis on miracle was so subtle that Danny might have missed it if he hadn't been watching her carefully. But Jessica saw the moment he caught her meaning, the way his face shifted from confusion to understanding to something approaching panic. As the afternoon progressed, Jessica positioned herself strategically, observing the dynamics between all the players in this elaborate deception. Marcus was glowing with pride and anticipation, his hand frequently resting on Brianna's pregnant belly as he accepted congratulations from guests. Brianna played her role perfectly, the grateful wife who'd found love with a wonderful man who accepted her completely. And Danny was beginning to sweat. He'd started watching Jessica with the wariness of someone who sensed danger but couldn't identify its source. Every time she smiled at him, every time she made a pleasant comment about the party or the happy couple, Danny looked more unsettled. The toast was scheduled for 4 o'clock, time to coincide with the cake cutting and the opening of gifts. Marcus had planned to speak about his gratitude for his new family and his excitement about becoming a father. Brianna would follow with her own remarks about second chances and the power of true love. At 3:55, Jessica excused herself from a conversation about nursery decorating tips and walked quietly to the gift table. She placed her envelope next to the elaborate 3-tiered cake, positioning it so it would be clearly visible when Marcus and Brianna approached for the cake cutting. Then she walked toward the exit. She was almost to the door when Marcus called for everyone's attention. "Friends, family, thank you all for being here today to celebrate with Brianna and me. This past year has been the most amazing journey of my life." Jessica paused in the doorway, her hand on the door handle, and turned to watch the scene unfold. Marcus stood next to the cake table, Brianna glowing beside him. 200 guests gathered in a semicircle with champagne glasses raised in preparation for the toast. "I know many of you have watched me go through some difficult times over the past few years," Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly across the room. "The end of my first marriage was painful for everyone involved, and I wasn't sure I'd ever find happiness again." Jessica saw several guests glance in her direction, their expressions sympathetic. "But then I met this incredible woman." Marcus's arm tightened around Brianna's waist, and she showed me that sometimes the most beautiful things can grow from the most unexpected circumstances. "Brianna, you've given me hope, purpose, and now you're giving me the greatest gift of all, our child." Brianna was crying prettily, her face radiant with what looked like genuine emotion. For a moment, Jessica almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "So please, raise your glasses with me as we toast to new beginnings, second chances, and the miracle of our growing family." 200 champagne glasses rose in unison. "To Marcus, Brianna, and baby," the crowd chorused. It was then that Marcus noticed the envelope next to the cake. Jessica watched his face change as he recognized her handwriting on the outside of the envelope, which simply read, "For the father." His smile faltered slightly as he picked up the envelope, and Jessica saw Brianna's eyes narrow with concern. "What's that, sweetheart?" Brianna's voice was light, but Jessica caught the edge of worry underneath. "Just another card, I think." Marcus was already opening the envelope, his attention focused on the contents. Jessica turned the door handle and stepped outside into the gray afternoon. Through the glass doors, she could see Marcus reading the paternity test results, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. She was walking toward her car when she heard the sound she'd been waiting for, the moment when Marcus's voice cut through the celebration like a blade. "Whose baby is this?" Jessica unlocked her car and slid into the driver's seat, her movements calm and deliberate. She started the engine and pulled slowly out of the parking space, driving past the country club's windows where she could see silhouettes of people moving frantically, guests turning toward the commotion, the celebration dissolving into chaos. For the first time in 2 years, Jessica felt completely at peace. The moment of truth has arrived. Jessica has dropped her bomb and walked away, leaving Marcus to discover the betrayal in front of 200 guests. But was this justice or revenge? Do you think Jessica did the right thing, or should she have handled this privately? What do you think is happening inside that ballroom right now? Share your thoughts in the comments. Jessica drove home slowly, taking the long route through the city center, past the coffee shop where she'd first learned about the affair, past the law office where she'd finalized her divorce, past all the landmarks of her old life. The radio played softly in the background, but she barely heard it. Her mind was entirely focused on imagining the scene she'd left behind. By now, Marcus would have read the paternity test results. He would have confronted Brianna, probably in front of all their guests. Danny would be trying to figure out how to escape or explain himself. And 200 people who'd come to celebrate a love story would be witnessing its spectacular collapse. Jessica's phone started ringing before she'd even reached her apartment. Danny, of course. She let it go to voicemail. Then Marcus called. Voicemail. Brianna called from what was probably Marcus's phone. Voicemail. Jessica's mother called, which meant the news was already spreading through their family network. Voicemail. By the time Jessica reached her loft, her phone had received 14 calls and 23 text messages. She turned it off and poured herself a glass of wine, settling into her favorite chair by the window that overlooked the city skyline. The wine was a bottle of Dom Perignon that Marcus had given her for their 5th wedding anniversary, something she'd been saving for a special occasion. Today felt special enough. As she sipped the champagne and watched the sun set over the city, Jessica allowed herself to imagine the conversations happening across town. Marcus demanding explanations from Brianna, who would probably try to claim the test was fake or that she'd been confused about the timeline. Danny attempting to explain his role while realizing he'd been manipulated as thoroughly as Marcus had been. Brianna's friends and family trying to process the revelation that their golden couple's entire relationship was built on deception. The beautiful thing about truth, Jessica reflected, was that once it was released into the world, it had a momentum all its own. She didn't need to manage the aftermath or ensure that everyone understood exactly what had happened. The facts would speak for themselves, and people would draw their own conclusions. Jessica's phone buzzed with notifications every few minutes, but she ignored them all. She ordered Thai food and watched old movies, luxuriating in the peaceful silence of her apartment after months of carrying the weight of devastating secrets. It wasn't until Sunday morning that she finally turned her phone back on and began reading through the messages. Danny had called 6 times and sent a dozen increasingly frantic texts. Jess, call me back. I can explain everything. Please answer your phone. I know you're angry, but I need to talk to you. Marcus is going crazy. Brianna is having contractions. This is a disaster. How did you get that paternity test? Why did you do this at the party? Jess, I'm your brother. At least let me explain what really happened. I think Brianna lied to me too. I never would have done this if I'd known the truth. Marcus had left 3 voicemails. Jessica listened to them while drinking her morning coffee. The first was incoherent rage. Jessica, what the hell is wrong with you? How could you do this? At our party, in front of everyone? You've destroyed everything. The second was quieter, more broken. Jess, I know you probably hate me and maybe I deserve this, but that baby might be coming early because of the stress. Brianna's at the hospital. I don't know what to do. I don't know what any of this means. The third was barely a whisper. She admitted it. Brianna admitted the baby is Danny's. She's been lying to all of us for months. Jess, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to our marriage, and I'm sorry for what they did to you, and I'm sorry for everything. Jessica deleted all the messages from Brianna without listening to them. Her mother had left a voicemail that was equal parts concern and pride. Jessica, honey, I don't know exactly what happened yesterday, but your cousin Maria was at that party, and she said you handled yourself with more grace than anyone deserved. Call me when you're ready to talk. There were messages from friends, colleagues, and even some strangers who'd somehow gotten her number. Apparently, videos from the party were already circulating on social media. Someone had recorded Marcus's confrontation with Brianna, and the footage was going viral in their social circle. Jessica made herself a proper breakfast and sat down at her laptop to see what the internet had made of her revelation. The videos were everything she'd imagined and more. Someone had captured the moment Marcus read the paternity test results, his face transforming from confusion to devastation in real time. Another video showed Brianna trying to claim the test was fake while simultaneously admitting she might have made mistakes in her timeline calculations. A third video, apparently taken after Jessica had left, showed Danny attempting to explain his role while Marcus alternated between rage and heartbreak. The comments on the videos were savage and deeply satisfying. People who'd known about Marcus and Brianna's affair were expressing outrage at the additional layer of deception. Others were praising Jessica for her strategic timing and dramatic flair. A few criticized her methods, but even those comments acknowledged that the truth needed to come out somehow. Jessica's favorite comment came from someone who'd clearly done their research. This woman's husband cheated on her with his secretary, then married the secretary, who was secretly sleeping with the wife's brother, got pregnant, and tried to pass off the brother's baby as the husband's while planning to keep the real father involved secretly. Jessica is a queen for exposing this at their $18,000 party. The dramatic timing is chef's kiss perfect. By Monday morning, the story had spread far beyond their immediate social circle. Local gossip blogs had picked it up, complete with photos from the party and speculation about what would happen next. Jessica's LinkedIn profile had received dozens of new connection requests from people who apparently admired her strategic approach to personal justice. Jessica went to work as usual, handling client calls and portfolio reviews, while her personal life provided entertainment for half the city. Carmen brought her coffee and a pastry from the bakery downstairs. "So," Carmen said carefully, "I may have seen some interesting videos on social media this weekend." Jessica looked up from her computer with a perfectly neutral expression. "Oh, Jessica Churn, you are officially my hero. The way you walked out right before everything exploded? The timing of that reveal? I've never seen anything so perfectly executed in my life." Jessica allowed herself a small smile. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't. But for what it's worth, I think you handled that entire situation with more class than most people could manage. You didn't cause the drama. You just revealed it at the most dramatically appropriate moment possible." That afternoon, Jessica received a call she'd been expecting. "Jessica, this is Tom Harrison from Marcus's law firm. I'm representing him in some personal matters that have recently come to light." "Hello, Tom. How can I help you?" "Marcus would like to speak with you, but he wanted me to reach out first to ensure that any conversation would be constructive rather than adversarial." Jessica leaned back in her chair, considering. What does Marcus want to discuss? He'd like to apologize. To you specifically. And he'd like to understand how you came to have the information you shared at the party. "I see. And what does Marcus plan to do with that information?" "He's filing for divorce immediately. He's also considering legal action against your brother for fraud and emotional distress, but he wanted to speak with you before making any decisions that might affect your family." Jessica felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but recognition that Marcus was trying to handle this situation better than he'd handled their marriage. "I can meet with Marcus. But I choose the time and place, and I want it understood that I owe him nothing. Not explanations, not apologies, and certainly not remorse for revealing the truth." "Understood. When would be convenient?" "Tomorrow. 7 p.m. The coffee shop on 5th Street where this all started." Jessica spent the rest of the day wrapping up client work and preparing for what would probably be her final conversation with the man she'd once planned to grow old with. She wasn't nervous, exactly, but she was curious. What did you say to someone who'd betrayed you so thoroughly that you'd been driven to orchestrate their public humiliation? The answer, she realized, was probably nothing at all. But she'd listened to what Marcus had to say. After everything he'd put her through, she owed herself that closure. Jessica has successfully exposed the truth and is watching the fallout from a distance. Marcus wants to meet and apologize, but is it too little too late? What do you think Jessica should say to her ex-husband? Should she be satisfied with her revenge, or is there more justice to be served? Let us know in the comments what you think should happen next. Jessica arrived at Grind Coffee 5 minutes early, choosing the same corner booth where Melissa had first revealed Danny and Brianna's affair. The irony felt appropriate. This entire cycle of deception and revelation had started in this exact spot, and now it would end here too. Marcus looked terrible when he walked through the door. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed from what was probably sleepless nights and tears. He'd lost weight in the 3 days since the party, his clothes hanging loose on his frame. This was not the confident, successful man who destroyed their marriage for a younger woman. This was someone who'd been broken by the discovery that his entire new life was built on lies. He slid into the booth across from Jessica, his hands shaking slightly as he set down his coffee cup. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Jessica nodded, saying nothing. She'd decided to let Marcus carry this conversation. After years of making excuses for his behavior, smoothing over his mistakes, and absorbing his emotional needs, she was done managing his feelings. "I need to apologize to you," Marcus began, his voice hoarse. "Not just for the affair, not just for how I handled our divorce, but for not seeing what was happening right in front of me. For being so focused on what I thought I wanted that I didn't notice I was being manipulated just as much as you were." Jessica sipped her coffee, studying Marcus's face. He looked genuinely remorseful, but she'd seen him look genuinely remorseful before, after fights, after forgotten anniversaries, after the many small betrayals that had preceded the large one. "Brianna played all of us," Marcus continued. "You, me, Danny." She created this elaborate web of lies that let everyone believe they were getting what they wanted while she maintained control over everything. "Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you?" Marcus flinched at her tone. "No. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could be deceived so completely. You became that person the moment you decided your happiness was more important than your integrity." Jessica set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Marcus, Brianna didn't seduce you into cheating on me. You chose to have an affair. She didn't force you to divorce me and marry her. You chose to throw away our marriage for someone you'd known for 3 months. I know. You don't know. Because if you really understood what you'd done, you would never have been surprised by any of this." Jessica's voice was steady, clinical. "Someone willing to help you cheat on your wife is willing to cheat on you. Someone who lies to your face for months is willing to lie about anything. You didn't fall victim to Brianna's manipulation, Marcus. You chose to ignore obvious red flags because acknowledging them would have meant admitting that you destroyed our marriage for an illusion." Marcus stared down at his hands. "The baby was born yesterday." Jessica felt a flicker of something, not quite compassion, but recognition of the complexity of the situation. How are they? "Healthy. Beautiful. Looks exactly like Danny." Marcus laughed bitterly. Even the nurses commented on it. "Oh, he has your brother-in-law's eyes," one of them said. "I was standing there holding this perfect little boy, thinking he was my son, and everyone could see the truth except me." "What did you tell the hospital?" "About paternity?" "Nothing yet. Legally, I'm still the father until the divorce is final and we sort out the paternity issues officially. But..." Marcus looked up at Jessica with an expression she'd never seen before. Complete defeat. "I held him for 20 minutes before I knew the truth. 20 minutes of thinking I was finally a father, that all the pain and mistakes had led to something beautiful. And now I can't look at him without seeing Danny's face." Jessica felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Marcus had made terrible choices, but he'd also genuinely wanted to be a father. She remembered how devastated he'd been after each of her miscarriages, how he'd held her while they both cried for the children they'd lost. "Have you seen Danny?" "He came to the hospital." Marcus's jaw tightened. He wanted to see his son. Wanted to discuss co-parenting arrangements with Brianna. Like this was all perfectly normal, like they hadn't spent months lying to everyone about what was really happening. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to get the hell away from me before I did something that would get me arrested." Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. "Jessica, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Jessica waited. How long have you known? About Danny and Brianna? 3 days before the party. Marcus's eyes widened. 3 days? You found out 3 days before, and you still came to the party. I came to the party because I found out 3 days before. Why didn't you tell me privately? Why did you wait until we were surrounded by everyone we know? Jessica had been expecting this question, and she'd prepared her answer carefully. Because, Marcus, you made our private pain public when you had an affair with your secretary and then married her 6 months after our divorce. You made my humiliation a public spectacle when you posted about your second chance at happiness and your miracle baby all over social media. You invited 200 people to celebrate the lies you'd been telling about your perfect new life. She leaned forward slightly, her voice becoming more intense. You didn't deserve a private, gentle revelation that would allow you to control the narrative and manage the damage. You deserve to experience exactly what I experienced, the complete destruction of everything you thought was real, witnessed by everyone whose opinion mattered to you. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I understand why you hate me. I don't hate you, Marcus. I did for a while. But hate is exhausting, and it was keeping me tied to you in a way that wasn't healthy. Jessica finished her coffee, signaling that this conversation was nearing its end. What I feel for you now is nothing. You're not important enough to hate anymore. The words hit Marcus like physical blows, and Jessica saw him recoil. She'd aimed for his ego deliberately. Marcus had always needed to feel important, significant, worthy of strong emotions even if they were negative ones. Indifference was the one thing his narcissism couldn't process. What happens now? He asked. Now you get divorced. Again. You figure out what you owe in child support to Danny and Brianna's son. You rebuild your life. Again. And hopefully you learn something from this experience about the difference between what you want and what you deserve. Jessica stood to leave, then paused. Marcus, you asked me how I got the paternity test results. He looked up hopefully, as if this information might somehow change the fundamental reality of his situation. Brianna's best friend gave them to me. Melissa Torres. She couldn't stand watching you be deceived anymore. Jessica pulled on her coat. You might want to think about what it means that a woman who barely knew you cared more about your welfare than your own wife and brother-in-law did. Jessica left Marcus sitting in the coffee shop, staring at his untouched coffee and probably contemplating the complete wreckage of his second chance at happiness. The next few weeks passed quietly for Jessica. The social media buzz about the party gradually died down, replaced by newer scandals and drama. She heard through mutual friends that Marcus had moved back to his apartment downtown, that Brianna was living with her parents while the divorce proceeded, and that Danny was desperately trying to reach her through their mother and various relatives. Jessica ignored all attempts at contact from her brother. She'd meant what she told Marcus. She was done managing other people's emotions and making excuses for their behavior. Danny was an adult who had made his choices. The consequences of those choices were his to handle. 3 weeks after the coffee shop meeting, Jessica received an unexpected visitor. Carmen knocked on her office door with an expression that suggested she was trying not to laugh. Jessica, there's a Melissa Torres here to see you. She says you'll know what this is about. Melissa looked different than she had in the coffee shop. Healthier, less guilty, almost radiant with relief. She was carrying a bottle of wine and what appeared to be a thank you card. Jessica, I hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced. I wanted to thank you. Thank me for having the courage to do what I couldn't. For making sure Marcus learned the truth. Melissa set the wine on Jessica's desk. I've been carrying that secret for months, watching Marcus fall in love with a baby that wasn't his, knowing that Brianna was planning to deceive him for years. I couldn't live with it anymore, but I was too cowardly to tell him myself. Jessica gestured for Melissa to sit down. How is everyone handling everything? Marcus is devastated, but he's handling it better than I expected. He's focusing on the divorce and getting his life back together. Brianna is. Melissa shrugged. Brianna is dealing with the consequences of her choices. She lost her husband, her financial security, and most of her friends. Turns out people don't like being deceived at elaborate parties. And Danny, your brother is trying to step up as a father, but it's complicated. He's realizing that Brianna manipulated him as much as she did Marcus, and he's angry about being used. Plus, trying to co-parent with someone who's that good at lying is challenging. Jessica nodded, unsurprised by any of this. Brianna's house of lies had been destined to collapse eventually. Jessica had simply chosen the timing and method of demolition. Jessica, can I ask you something? Melissa leaned forward. Do you regret how you handled it? The public revelation, I mean. Jessica considered the question seriously. She'd been asking herself the same thing for weeks. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. What I regret is that it was necessary at all. I regret that 3 adults I trusted made choices that were so selfish and destructive that exposing them publicly felt like justice. But the method? The timing? No. I think it was exactly what the situation required. Melissa smiled. Good. Because watching that party implode was the most satisfying thing I've ever witnessed. You gave Marcus the gift of truth, even if it was wrapped in humiliation. That's more than Brianna ever would have given him. After Melissa left, Jessica sat in her office, looking out at the city's skyline and thinking about the nature of justice. She'd orchestrated the complete destruction of 3 people's carefully constructed lies, and she felt no guilt about it whatsoever. But she also felt no particular satisfaction anymore. The rage that had driven her to plan such elaborate revenge had burned itself out, leaving behind something cooler and more sustainable: peace. Jessica had learned that sometimes the best revenge wasn't about making other people suffer. It was about refusing to suffer anymore yourself. Jessica has found her peace, but what about everyone else? Marcus is rebuilding his life, Brianna is facing the consequences of her lies, and Danny is trying to be a father while dealing with his own guilt. Do you think Jessica's revenge was justified? Was the public humiliation necessary, or could she have handled it differently? Share your thoughts about whether this was justice or just very satisfying revenge. 6 months after the party that broke the internet in their social circle, Jessica was having drinks with her friend Sarah. The same Sarah who had been Marcus's colleague and had awkwardly tried to maintain friendships with both sides during the divorce. You know, Sarah said, swirling her wine thoughtfully, I never told you this, but I always thought there was something off about Brianna. She was too perfect, too sweet, like she was performing being the ideal woman rather than actually being one. Jessica raised an eyebrow. You never mentioned this during my marriage. What was I supposed to say? Hey, Jessica, I think your husband's secretary is a sociopath who's planning to steal your life. You would have thought I was jealous or paranoid. Sarah laughed ruefully. Besides, I figured if Marcus was dumb enough to fall for it, that said more about him than her. And now I think you're the luckiest woman alive to be free of all that dysfunction. Jessica had to agree. The past 6 months had been the most peaceful period of her adult life. Without the constant drama of Marcus's needs and Danny's romantic disasters, she'd rediscovered parts of herself that had been dormant for years. She'd started painting again, something she'd abandoned early in her marriage when Marcus had complained that her art supplies made their apartment look cluttered. She traveled to 3 different countries, taking solo trips that had once seemed impossible when she'd been part of a couple with complicated family obligations. Most importantly, she'd learned to trust her own judgment again. The Jessica who had married Marcus had been someone who doubted her instincts, who made excuses for other people's behavior, who believed that love meant accepting whatever treatment someone decided to give you. The Jessica who had exposed Brianna's lies at an $18,000 party was someone who understood that love without respect was just manipulation with better marketing. Have you heard anything about how they're all doing? Sarah asked. Jessica shook her head. She'd made a deliberate choice to avoid information about her former life, blocking social media accounts and steering conversations away from gossip about Marcus, Brianna, or Danny. But Sarah was persistent, and Jessica was curious despite herself. Marcus seems to be doing well, actually. He sold the house he shared with Brianna and moved to a smaller place closer to downtown. Word is he's in therapy and focusing on his work. No dating that anyone knows of. Good for him. Brianna moved back in with her parents with the baby. She's working part-time at some boutique and posting a lot of single mom inspiration quotes on Instagram. Very strong women rise from their ashes energy. Jessica snorted. Of course she is. And your brother? Sarah hesitated. What about Danny? He's been trying to be involved with the baby, but it's messy. Brianna wants child support but doesn't want him around too much because it reminds everyone of the scandal. Danny's frustrated because he wants to be a real father but feels like he's being used again. Jessica felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. Danny had made his choices with full knowledge that they would hurt people. The complications he was facing were natural consequences, not unfair punishments. The funniest part, Sarah continued, is that Brianna keeps trying to paint herself as the victim in all this. She's been telling people that she was confused about paternity and that you ambushed her at the party out of jealousy. Let her tell whatever story helps her sleep at night, Jessica said. The truth is already out there. And it was. The videos from the party had become legendary in their social circle, shared and reshared whenever someone needed an example of dramatic justice perfectly executed. Jessica had become something of a local celebrity among women who'd been cheated on or betrayed by family members. She regularly received messages from strangers asking for advice about handling their own situations. Jessica's standard response was always the same. Don't let other people's bad choices become your problem to solve. Protect yourself first, tell the truth when it matters, and then build something better. A year after the party, Jessica received an unexpected call. Jessica, this is Marcus. She almost hung up immediately, but something in his tone made her pause. What do you want, Marcus? I wanted to let you know that my therapy has been illuminating. I've been working with someone who specializes in narcissistic behavior patterns, and I'm starting to understand how I became someone who could justify the choices I made. Jessica waited, not particularly interested in Marcus's journey of self-discovery, but mildly curious about where this was going. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness or to try to rebuild any kind of relationship, Marcus continued. I'm calling because my therapist suggested I needed to take full accountability for what I did to you, without expecting anything in return. Okay. Jessica, I destroyed our marriage because I was selfish and weak and couldn't handle the idea that I might not be the center of your universe anymore. After your miscarriages, you became more independent, more focused on your career, less available to manage my emotions and make me feel important. Instead of dealing with my own insecurity and growing up, I found someone who would make me feel special without requiring me to be better. Jessica was surprised by his honesty. This was more self-awareness than Marcus had shown in their entire marriage. Brianna wasn't some femme fatale who seduced me away from you, Marcus continued. She was just young and inexperienced enough to think that my attention was flattering rather than predatory. I was her boss, Jessica. I had all the power in that dynamic, and I used it to get what I wanted without caring what it cost anyone else. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. You deserved a partner who could handle difficulty without betraying you. You deserved someone who valued your trust more than his own gratification. Marcus's voice was steady now, matter of fact. And because I want you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. Not the affair, not the divorce, and certainly not Danny and Brianna's deception. You were the only honest person in that entire situation. Jessica felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of closure she hadn't known she needed. Thank you for saying that. There's one more thing. I'm getting married again. Jessica blinked, surprised by how little she felt about this news. Congratulations. Her name is Linda. She's divorced, has 2 teenagers, works as a nurse practitioner. She's nothing like Brianna. Nothing like you either, actually. She's someone who doesn't need me to be anything other than what I actually am. That sounds healthy. It is. Jessica, I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone who appreciates what an extraordinary woman you are. After Marcus hung up, Jessica sat in her apartment thinking about the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. 2 years ago, she'd been a woman who defined herself through her marriage, who absorbed other people's problems as if they were her own, who believed that being good, meant accepting whatever treatment people decided to give her. Now she was someone who understood that the most loving thing you could do for yourself was to refuse to participate in other people's dysfunction. She'd learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-respect was walking away from people who didn't value what you brought to their lives. Jessica's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Danny wants to know if you'll see him. He says he has something important to tell you." Jessica stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Tell Danny that when he's ready to take full responsibility for his choices without asking me to manage his feelings about the consequences, we can talk. Until then, I'm not interested." She hit send and immediately felt lighter. The doorbell rang, and Jessica opened it to find a delivery man holding an enormous bouquet of flowers. "Jessica Chin?" "That's me." The flowers were from a new client, a CEO whose portfolio Jessica had just restructured, resulting in a 7-figure gain. The card read, "Thank you for seeing opportunities where others saw only problems. Looking forward to a long and profitable partnership." Jessica arranged the flowers in her dining room and thought about how fitting the metaphor was. She'd spent most of her adult life trying to fix other people's problems, manage their emotions, and create stability from their chaos. Now she was in the business of helping people build wealth by recognizing value and eliminating liabilities. It turned out the skills were remarkably similar. That evening, Jessica opened a bottle of wine. Not the Dom Perignon from her marriage, which she'd finished months ago, but a new bottle from a vineyard she discovered on her recent trip to France. She sat on her balcony watching the city lights and thinking about the strange mathematics of betrayal and consequence. Marcus had cheated with Brianna, who had cheated with Danny, who had betrayed Jessica. The lies had multiplied and compounded until the weight of deception had collapsed the entire structure. But from that collapse, something unexpected had emerged: Jessica's complete freedom to become whoever she wanted to be. She'd thought her revenge was about justice, about making sure that liars faced consequences for their choices. But looking back, Jessica realized that her real victory wasn't the public humiliation she'd orchestrated at that party. Her real victory was this: sitting alone in her beautiful apartment, financially independent, emotionally stable, and completely uninterested in fixing anyone else's problems ever again. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it was about building a life so good that their opinion of you became completely irrelevant. Jessica raised her glass to the city skyline and toasted her extraordinary, peaceful, beautifully uncomplicated life. She'd never been happier. What an incredible journey from betrayal to complete freedom. Jessica didn't just get revenge. She got something far more valuable: a life of peace, success, and authentic happiness. She learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in other people's drama. Do you think Jessica's story is really over? Or do you think Danny will try to repair their relationship? Was Marcus's final phone call genuine growth or just another manipulation? And most importantly, do you think Jessica's approach to handling betrayal was the right one? This story shows us that sometimes the people who hurt us the most actually give us the greatest gift: the motivation to become our best selves. Jessica's revenge wasn't just about exposing lies at a party. It was about refusing to accept less than she deserved ever again. What would you do if you discovered this level of family betrayal? Let us know in the comments. Like this video if Jessica's transformation inspired you. Share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of choosing yourself first. And subscribe for more stories about turning betrayal into breakthrough. Remember, the best revenge is a life so good that your betrayers become irrelevant footnotes in your success story.